So by default, when you create either a forum or a topic in the discussion tool in Brightspace, it's going to be available to all students, all users within the subject site. It's going to be visible. And we can see an example here in this subject site. We've got a main subject discussion forum, and it's available to everybody. That's just the default state when we create either a new forum or a new topic. If we scroll down a little further inside this particular subject, you'll notice that they do have some forums which have been created in a way so that they are restricted to particular cohorts of students or particular groups. And we can see with this icon, it's telling me that this one is available. There's some group or section restriction in place, and that makes sense given that it's talking about being for online students. And if we look a little further, I can see we've got some here that are restricted to a particular campus cohort of students as well. So internal Albury students, Bathurst internal, etc. So I'm going to show you how to make a restricted forum and or topic inside the Brightspace discussion tool. So I'll jump into the training site. I'm in the discussion area and I'm going to start by making a new forum. So we'll give it a title, sample, restricted discussion forum. And then you can put in things like the description, etc. You have your customization options here for how you want user behavior to happen inside the forum. But you'll notice at the top that there is a tab called restrictions. If we click on that, we've got a few options. I can hide the forum. We can toggle it here. There's a number of ways to do that, but that's one of them. We can set things like start and end dates if we want the forum to only appear at certain points in time and then disappear. And scrolling down, we have our release conditions, and this is the language we have in Brightspace for restricting or targeting content, communication, and assessment items. We're always looking for this term, release conditions. Who is this going to be available to or released to? So in this case, speaking about a forum, I want to create a release condition. So I'm going to click on create and attach. And the type of release condition we put in place when we want to target a particular cohort of students is we are looking for the class list and we want it to look for a particular section enrollment. So that's a cohort of students. And at that point, Brightspace will look at the subject and see which sections exist already. And I can see in here, for example, that there are 3 sections available to choose from. So I might make this forum for Port Macquarie internal students and hit create. And it's the same process for creating a release condition, whether you're working with content, communication items like announcements, your discussions, your assessment items. We create the release condition, we look at the class list and we tell it to find a particular section of students. So when I finish creating this, it's only going to be visible to students enrolled in this particular cohort, Port Mac internal. You may want to think about changing the title of the forum to also indicate who it's for so that you can see that at a superficial level. Maybe I'll do that here if I go back to properties. And I might say in brackets PTI, for example, so that I know that restriction that I put in there is still there. I can jump between the 2 tabs. Enrolled in Port Mac. If I wanted this forum to be available for multiple cohorts of students, but not all of them, I could in fact create another release condition, go through that process again, look at the class list, look for a particular section, enrollment, and this time round I'm going to say, actually I also want Bathurst internal students. So then we'll have a forum that will only be visible now to these 2 different internal cohorts of students. But the catch here, if you're trying to add multiple cohorts and not just one, is to look above at this condition here. To access this item, users must satisfy, and by default it says all conditions. So in this instance, the student would need to be enrolled in both Port Macquarie internal and Bathurst internal cohorts. Well, that's not going to happen. So we hit the drop down, And we have an option here that says any. So at that point, either students enrolled at Port Mac or Bathurst Internal. So this is only going to crop up if you're trying to set release conditions that apply to several cohorts of students, not just the one. But that's how we add cohorts of students so that only those students will be able to see that particular forum. You will note directly underneath that there is another option in the discussion tool called Group and Section Restrictions. It does exactly the same thing. It will allow you to check the box and then look for particular sections or cohorts of students and groups. So you can do that in the discussion tool as well, but I'm going to suggest that you follow exactly the same process that we use with all of our other tools in Brightspace to restrict this to a particular group of students, and that's by creating release conditions, just so you get into that same practice with assessment items, with content items, with communication items. Use a release condition, get it to look at the class list and the section enrollment. But yes, there is a duplication in terms of that same ability. You could use that second option. So if I hit save and close, and I'm going to scroll to the very bottom of my discussion area, because your new forums will always appear at the bottom. And I can see here we have my sample restricted discussion forum for Port internal students. I haven't updated that. And we get an icon here that tells me that it has release conditions. And those release conditions that we set up were that the students needed to be enrolled in either Port internal or Bathurst internal. So I've created a forum that's only going to be visible to those students. And in fact, every topic that I create in this forum is only going to be accessible to those students. They're just not going to be able to see the forum and the topics if they're not part of those two cohorts. So if I went and created a new topic inside this forum, sample topic, just put some text in, hit save and close. It's now sitting inside my forum, which is only available to these particular students, Port internal, Bathurst internal. So no one else is going to be able to see it, to open it. Now you can in fact create topics and restrict them to particular cohorts in exactly the same way that we just made that forum restricted. So let's look at the example of my open forum at the beginning. So my main subject forum is available to everybody. But perhaps inside this forum, I want to create a topic which is only visible to a restricted group or cohort of students. Now to do that, we go through the process of creating a new topic. So I'm going to add a topic inside this forum. And I'll even call it new restricted topic. Some sample text in there. And the way that we restrict topic items, it has the same customization options here that we get with our assessments and our content. So I'm going to go into my availability dates and conditions area. And here we have release conditions. So again, I've looked for that common language. I want to add a release condition to this topic. So let's add a release condition. I'll create a new one. And the type of condition we want to put in place is refer to the class list and enrollment in a section. So at that point, it will look for which sections exist in this subject. There they are. So this time round, I'm going to make this particular topic inside an open forum only available to Bathurst distance students. And again, I would probably indicate that somehow in the title, just so I knew at a glance who this was for. So I've put in BD, Bathurst Distance, there next to the topic title. Over here on the right-hand side, under my release conditions, it says, to view this item, other users must satisfy this condition, enrolled in Bathurst Distance. And again, we have the ability to do this multiple times if we want this to be visible to multiple cohorts of students. At the moment, it's just for BD students, so I'm going to hit save and close. And it will be at the bottom. New restricted topic for Bathurst Distance. And there's that icon telling me that's what's happened here. It's been restricted. It's now only available to those users. So that's how we make restricted forums and topics in Brightspace discussions.